This is Connection.
Oh, look, you can play with your wire the whole time now. What is she saying?
She's saying we're going to get it when we get home.
I know, right? Check. Hello. Hi. Must share show. I know, right?
Subtle.
Hi, nobody.
Nobody
Wait,
yet.
no. Hey, Tommy's number one.
Tommy. There we go.
All right.
Always count on Tommy.
Yeah,
Hey,
this
Tommy.
soft opening. He's got only, how many days to your birthday? Come on now. Take advantage. Oh, look at that. It's already time to go to break. It's like I planned it.
That's pretty cool.
Linda, you do have to say something so I can test your mic.
Okay, what do you want to say?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Stand by. Show starting. Oh, yeah.
Live from the Connections Studio Suites, it's Connections. Connections is relationship radio.
It's that time again, my friends. Hi, it's Melissa Fox, and in Lizzie's absence, no hashtag Lizzie said what tonight, we've got Linda Voll. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. David Klein. Wow.
Here I am in my Christmas sweater.
That is a sweater.
It is a sweater. It's that week. So we do Christmas sweaters, ugly sweaters, nasty sweaters in some cases, all week long.
Okay.
And why? Because we can.
Fair enough. Okay, so you've accomplished an ugly festive sweater.
Oh, no, my best one is the Grinch, which I did not wear today because I'm going to wear it tomorrow.
Okay, all right, good enough. So, welcome to the show, everybody. Tonight we're talking about dementia, in case you forgot.
How would they know?
I know. It's cruel. It's, no, not the jokes. I mean, dementia. It can be really cruel.
Oh, it's cruel. There's no question about it.
So, you're going to explain it to us, first of all. What is dementia? And I don't think it's all the same. It's not like some sort of cut and dry explanation, is it?
No, dementia is a funny kind of a catch-all phrase. You know, it's a medical phrase. It's used commonly. It's used in lay literature. It's used all kinds of different places. But really what dementia means is organic brain syndrome, which means nothing to anybody else but a physician. And what you'll see is loss of cognitive function, can't think straight, can't cipher, can't, add up numbers, can't remember simple phrases, names, and such. And what's interesting about it is the memory loss is typically short term. So it's what happened this afternoon, this morning, yesterday, or the day before, but not what happened 40 years ago at a birthday party. So that comes as kind of a surprise to a lot of people that don't deal with patients that suffer from dementia. Well, why is it that he's able to remember this back in the X, Y, and Z, but can't remember what I gave him for birthday last year? Because that's the way it works. Short-term and long-term memory are different. Remembering names, nominative aphasia or dysphagia. It means you can't remember certain things or you break things up. So dementia is kind of a funny disorder. It's not a disorder. It's more or less a general description, very much like pain. What is pain? Well, according to Descartes, it means one thing. According to an anesthesiologist, it means something else. And to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, it means something entirely different, like a depression equivalent, if there is in fact such a thing, which I don't believe there is because I'm not a psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. So what is dementia and why should you care? And the answer is this, is that we're all, if we live long enough, we are all destined to develop some degree of dementia. Some earlier in age, some very much later. And what can you do to detect it? What can you do to treat it? And that's going to be the key message to this whole show, is what can you do to treat it? And what can you do to avoid it? And you're going to think that there's nothing I can do to avoid it because it's genetic this and genetic that. And that's utter absolute nonsense. A gene is a switch, and you can turn the genes on and turn them off by things like eating, by things like drinking, by things like smoking, by things like medications, drugs of many different natures. Whether natural or highly unnatural, it really doesn't make any difference. You can, in fact, induce dementia. And if you don't believe that, I want you to think, very much like Bill Clinton and Obama, you didn't inhale, did you? Marijuana, will in fact cause temporary dementia. And if you do it long enough, it causes permanent dementia. Now, there are people out there that are going to be throwing ripe or unripe fruit at me right now.
Yeah, I felt something just hit me in the head.
Okay, but the fact of the matter is we all know chronic stoners
Settle
and
down,
how
Tony.
they are, right? We just know how they operate. You can tell somebody that's been smoking weed since the 80s because they look like Ozzy, right? There's other drugs will do it too. So what's it all about and why? Things that induce short-term memory loss and brain damage will in fact cause dementia. So what are the different types of dementia, you might ask? Is it all Alzheimer's?
Wait, I should ask that.
Yes, ask the question.
Dr. Dave. No, wait, you know what? Let's let our guest host ask that question.
Oh, good, Linda.
So, is Alzheimer's and dementia the same animal?
No. That's a
Okay.
good question, though. It was that was on our list of things that I was going to be asked, so it's a brilliant one. Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia, and technically it's pre-senile dementia. That means it happens before you get old, except that we know it differently these days as old people's dementia. So Alzheimer described pre-senile dementia. So it has been usurped. It has been hijacked. It is what it is.
Okay, so it's not the same thing now. So dementia and Alzheimer's are early onset.
Entirely different. Alzheimer's, a different thing.
Okay.
So Alzheimer's disease, is in fact, what causes it is a little bit questionable right now. Some of the pathological findings are there. These neurofibrillatory tangles, within the brain, you end up seeing deposition of certain substances like amyloid around the glial cells. Now, if that sounds... Well, you need to know that there actually is a pathological finding.
Yeah, but I don't need to hear the words that I can't even spell, let alone pronounce.
Well, that's how you can charge more.
No, I know, but we're not charging. We're trying to instruct the lay listener, if you will.
Okay, well
So
then
try a little better. The goo
the
around
goo.
your brain.
Yeah, you have these little wires going around there, and certain goo gets deposited called amyloid, and it screws things up.
Thank you.
And it's progressive. But there are other types of dementia that are actually more common. There are other ones that are very, very uncommon, but make Alzheimer's look like a cakewalk, like Lewy body dementia, which is very, very rapid and fatal. So people develop that, and a few months later, they're done. It's a very different type of rapid early onset and rapid degradation of function. Okay. So what difference is there between Alzheimer's and just plain old-fashioned dementia? Dementia is a broad brush, and Alzheimer is a sub-segment. It's a type of dementia.
Okay.
So what are the different types of dementia that we'll find? Well, you have one called Wernicke psychosis, which is alcoholic dementia, people that drink too much.
Is that like the DTs back in the day?
No.
Oh,
DT is a little bit different. They have a different acronym for it now, but it's just as shaky as it was then. But when people drink, and they drink, and they drink, and they drink, these are neurotoxins, and it damages and permanently damages the brain. And there are difficulties with memory, names in particular. But the picture is different. You can end up with dementia from syphilis. You can end up with dementia from opiates. You can end up with dementia from amphetamines, things like Adderall. You can end up with dementia from post-concussion. You can be damaged. Okay, some of these football players.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask about CTE.
That is a
but
type
I
of
thought
dementia.
that might be something we can look into
Yeah,
a
it's
little bit
chronic
further.
traumatic encephalopathy. So what will happen is you get punched around. They used to call it punch drunk. So what happens is you damage the brain little bit by little bit by little bit, and then pretty soon you can start detecting it more easily. Hypothyroidism can lead to dementia. Chemotherapy will lead to dementia. I had a patient with that today. Came in, and she's got all kinds of problems remembering this, remembering that. So her mom and sister brought her in. All three of them are now patients of mine. So she had breast cancer. They put her on chemotherapy, radiation, and developed something called chemo brain, which is a type of dementia. Now, if I use that word with her, she'd be a little bit irritated with me, because the connotations of dementia are different than if you tell somebody, oh, you have organic brain syndrome, chemo brain. It's the same thing, arose by any other name. So it kind of is what it is. Addison's disease will cause dementia.
Wait, what's Addison's?
Addison's disease is adrenal failure. And there are people out there that'll be told, I have chronic fatigue syndrome. Good luck to you. Okay, because odds are you're either hypothyroid and or you have adrenal failure or adrenal fatigue. And that will, over time, lead to a type of dementia unless you treat it. Ooh. In the next segment, we're going to start getting into diagnosis and treatment. Because it doesn't do you any good to say, well, my goodness, we know exactly what's going on here. You have an untreatable disease. Goodbye. Pay your bill on the way out. It doesn't work that way. So the fun part about medicine isn't telling people that they're going to do badly. The fun part is picking out the people and treating the ones that can be improved. So my mom, when she took her thyroid and her cortisol, her Cortef, she could finish the New York Times crossword puzzle every Sunday in pen.
I can't even finish
that
it
is
in
tough.
pencil.
My mom. Oh, there we go. I love it. Scared the heck out of me.
Down to the chimney with good singing.
We got to take a break here. Hey, Paul. Paul, we'll talk about that real quick here in a second. When we get back, we got the social media. That scared us, didn't it?
I tell you,
Yeah, a little bit.
it's a good thing I'm not fecal incontinent.
Yeah, it's a good thing because you're in my chair. Stay right there.
You can have it back.
Connections is Relationship Radio.
Three, two, one.
Yeah, it's time to come back from commercial. Yeah, you know it's time to come back from commercial. Yeah, I said it's time to get back in your chair. Coming back from commercial.
The lovely tones of Linda Nunez. Check her out, lindanunezmusic.com. And welcome back to Connections. Get back in your chair. Dr. David Klein is with us tonight, us being Linda Voll, our guest host, and of course, Melissa Fox. That's me. We're talking about dementia. Now, dementia and Alzheimer's, two different things. Dementia is a lot of different things and can be treatable.
Yes.
Okay. But let's talk about some of the symptoms first of all.
Okay, short-term memory loss is the hallmark of it.
Okay.
So you start losing your ability to remember what you did most recently. So it could be, what am I doing in this room? Now that happens to everybody. You walk into the kitchen, you can't remember what you went in there for. Why? Because you're focusing on something else.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you put your shoes on different feet, they're two different shoes, you're wearing your shirt backwards, and then you show up in the kitchen and can't remember why,
And you're not
you
wearing
may
pants,
have an
yeah.
issue. You show up to work, as I have, with two different kinds of shoes on.
Your wife is
That's-
wrapping you on that.
Yeah,
I saw that.
Why? Because I do this sometimes. I can't help it. So that is different than loss of focus. So if you're thinking about other sorts of things, or you're profoundly fatigued, that's not the same thing as
Okay.
dementia.
All right.
So what can you do to tell the difference? What can you do? How can a doctor, how can anybody walk you through, is this dementia, early dementia, or is this something else?
Okay.
So we're going to walk into the neurologist office and they're going to ask you the following questions. I'm going to tell you 6 things. I'm going to ask you in 5 minutes to tell me what they were, which is a test I can't pass and never could. But I did very, very well on my SATs and the rest.
Man,
Because,
woman, TV.
right. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Right.
Was
So
that right?
different people have different capabilities. Remember those things. I can't remember birth dates. I can't remember my social security number or my driver's license number. And Tess here can remember every credit card number she's ever had. So what's the difference? Because we have different spreadsheet cells within our coconut, within our brain, that handle different things. So I like to think about it as if my brain were a large honeycomb, and each honeycomb has a bit of memory, a quantum of memory in it. Once it fills up, people say, how do you remember so many different things? It's because I really do know what's important and what isn't, but I'm not going to knock something important out for something that's not important. Consequently, I get beaten up regularly. So I don't remember and can't remember our anniversary. I can't remember Tessa's birthday. Tessa's my wife.
I'm pretty sure it's behind me on
I
the wall.
I can't remember. No, I can't remember any of this stuff. I can't remember my daughter's birthday. Sometimes I can't remember her name. Doesn't mean I've got dementia. It means I've got important stuff going on inside the brain. So how do you sort this out? Well, you go to the very same neurologist, and here's what's going to happen. They're going to hand you a piece of paper. They're going to ask you to draw a clock on it. And then right on here, right on that clock, 4 o'clock. And if the clock looks like 4 o'clock, you don't have dementia. And if it looks like all the numbers are on one side or the other side, or you don't have them in there, you must have dementia. By the time it ends up like that, you are drooling in your toasties, and anybody, with or without a medical degree, will know what's going on. So how do you tell if somebody has the subtleties of dementia or whether or not they are fatigued? If you take somebody and deprive them of sleep for 2 or 3 nights or more, they will demonstrate clinical signs of dementia. But they don't have dementia.
That's how I put my first cult together.
They don't have, right. Well, that is just what you do, is you deprive people of sleep, and they'll pretty well start believing anything you tell them.
Do whatever you want.
It is fairly interesting. The Chinese water torture from the Korean War is a great example of that. So what do you do? And so at Stages of Life Medical Institute, my employer, I own it. I guess I'm my own employer, which is a great thing if you have the opportunity. We have a technology called a CogniView. And there are a dozen of these in the country. And it looks like a big old-fashioned TV set on wheels. It's a computer with a hood on it because we want our patients to be sitting there without being distracted. And what it does electronically is it dissects something called signal-to-noise ratio. Now, you're not going to really care so much about that as a listener, but in radio business, that's what this is all about. The entire radio industry, from Marconi on forward, was based upon signal-to-noise ratio. And what you do is you put your signal across a noise signal. So you have a transmission signal, and then you put irregularity on that. That's parsed out, and then you end up with an analog signal, turns into sound, voice, or music. What this does is it throws shapes, letters, numbers in front of you, moving around, and it challenges you to find the patterns and pull them out and do it within a certain period of time. It will identify a half a dozen or more different types of memory loss, focus, and whatnot, and that helps us in the diagnosis of dementia. Wow. So I have people coming in that you would think would be perfectly normal, doctors, lawyers, police officers.
I was gonna say, I don't want to do this.
I'm gonna throw you on the machine just for fun.
I know
I'm
you.
gonna
I
see
know
how-
you.
I'm going to see how demented you
I
are.
saw the glint in his eye when he's
yeah.
talking about it. He's like,
And so what happens
it's
is
fun when Melissa gets on that
it
machine.
gives you what's called a scalar value or a number. So I'm able to put a number to the different symptoms that you may be having.
Wow.
So patients come in on a regular basis. We test them. This is like a $90 test. It cost me $30,000. After about 40 years, I'll get my money out.
You'll
of this
never
thing.
get your money
Never get
back.
my money out.
But
it
you
doesn't.
love having these toys.
But my toys are my business. It's just the way that it works. So I love my toys, but it does a couple things for me. When somebody comes in and they think that they've got early dementia, we can put them on the machine. 20 minutes later, you have your answer, and that's kind of a cool thing. Ma'am, you don't have dementia. You're tired. You're fatigued. Get some sleep. You give them sleep medications. They come back, and if you retest them, they improve. The other thing that's kind of neat is that if you're able to put numbers on these things, then you can treat that which you need to treat or things that you can identify as being off and then retest in 3 or 4 months. And if you see net improvement, you know you've nailed it. So I was actually approached by a research neurologist from Harvard who flew down from Boston to meet with me, telling me all about this research he was doing because he heard about the research I was doing and asked me whether I would be willing to collaborate with him. And I said, fine. I'm looking at it chemically, hormonally, biochemically. He's looking at it from his machine he's trying to sell. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I said, fine, we can work this out. So there are 12 of these or so in the country. They're at major universities and Stages of Life Medical Institute. So what we're finding, which is really wickedly cool, is that you'll see dementia with things like adrenal fatigue or adrenal failure. And when you replace the cortisol, DHEA, and/or pregnenolone, wouldn't you know it, the dementia figures, the numbers, the scores that you're getting improve.
So kidneys?
Not kidneys.
Above the kidneys?
The adrenal. Oh, yes, the adrenals are above the kidneys.
Thank you.
Yeah, you had me confused. What the heck? Okay. Yeah, the adrenal glands, for those of you that have never had the opportunity to feel them in your hands, are these kind of glistening sorts of tissue that sit on the top of the kidneys. Adrenal means above the kidney. what do? They secrete over 150 different hormones, including cortisol, which is something that you're going to, cortisol, what's that all about? They gave me prednisone instead of cortisol. It's another argument to come later. But what they do is they regulate blood pressure. You're going to see your gonadotropins, things like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, largely come from the adrenals, not the gonads necessarily, but the adrenals, as well as what are called mineralocorticoids, things that allow you to control your blood pressure and salt retention. So these are very, very important glands, and you're going to go, well, gee, I've never heard of them. And that's unfortunate. The adrenal glands are so important to your body that they have the greatest blood flow per milligram or gram of tissue than any other tissue in your body, more so than the brain, spinal cord, muscle, heart, or anything. So the amount of blood that passes through these things is enormous, somewhat because of the metabolism that's going on, but also because of the relative importance to the control of the rest of the body. And it is a joyful topic.
Wow.
That was good.
No, that was good. And we're learning. We're learning here.
And when you have good function, that's what you get. Joy to the world, right?
All right, we're talking about dementia. When we come back, let's talk about some recommendations that we can prevent it. And it is not hereditary, correct?
No.
Not hereditary. There you go. This is Connections. We'll be right back in just a moment. Please stay with us and follow our podcast on the iHeartRadio app. Just search for Connection Show.
This is Connections. You're listening to Connections.
I am a golden god!
I think this guy is the reason that I'm having more sex.
You know what? I'm tired. Could you just call yourself an idiot?
Oh, why can't I have a nickname?
But before we go any further, I'd like to put my pants on.
No way. No goddamn way.
Connections is relationship radio.
Welcome back to Connections. Melissa Fox along with Linda Voll sitting in for hashtag Lizzie Said What.
Hey.
And Dr. David Klein. Now, Linda, you have a stepfather who's in memory care.
Correct.
What's that all about? I don't even understand what memory care is about, but how long has he been in there?
You forgot.
Yeah, a long time, maybe 10 years.
He doesn't
It's a long time. Well, my mom was in an Alzheimer's unit for about 20.
Wow.
So this is it's not. It's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what is memory care? It is expensive. That's what it is.
Remember that, if nothing else.
It is nursing home on steroids, which gets down to the topic. So how do you diagnose treatable forms of dementia? Mm-hmm. If you have Alzheimer's, there's some things that you can do. There's some things you can do to prevent or forestall dementia of that nature. And it all involves getting the right blood work, getting somebody to look at you and diagnose it properly. So the first thing you want to do is to look at the two most common causes of biological dementia. One is adrenal fatigue or adrenal failure, and number two is hypothyroidism, whether it's subclinical hypothyroidism or whether it's frank thyroid failure. So hypothyroidism downregulates the body's temperature, and wouldn't you know it, the brain has a temperature at which it operates best. What's that temperature? And it's about 100 degrees, 98 and change to 100 and, let's say 100.3, in that range. So I have patients coming in the office, and they have a temperature of 97. They go, well, that's normal for me. It's a low temperature. That's a low fever. I think, what kind of idiot are you? So there's no such thing as a low fever. What you have is a low temperature. The species called human, okay, is very interesting. It has a narrow range of normal temperatures, 97.6 to 99.6, and it's supposed to go up and down during the day. Low of 97.6 at 4 a.m. Why is that? Because your cortisol level is the highest at that point. That tells you something. Then the thyroid kicks in, ramps your temperature up to 100, somewhere between 99.6 to 100 degrees. And then it backs it back down. So it's a sinusoidal pattern. It's a wave, up and down, up and down, up and down. When you have a fever, a profound fever, it's 103 degrees as an adult, you're drunk. People, they get demented. They all kinds of issues that you're going to end up with. Psychosis, hallucinations. Okay. It's interesting, but you end up with organic brain syndrome from the heat. You can do the same thing with heat stroke. You can do the same thing with a sauna, actually. People die in the sauna.
Sure.
They die in hot tubs.
Broil your brain.
Yeah, you sit that hot tub for 102, 103 degrees and sit in there long enough and you're going to die. So, so you have to look at the adrenal glands. So the French have worked out one of the possible mechanisms for development of Alzheimer's disease, and it involves a gene called the MAP-PREG. And there are receptors for MAP-PREG receptors. That's pregnenolone, not progesterone. Okay? Pregnenolone is a very, very interesting hormone. You're going to go, well, never heard of it. How important could it be? I want you to imagine this for a second. Cholesterol. And everybody knows cholesterol is bad. You don't want much cholesterol. Except for one thing. Cholesterol converts immediately to pregnenolone, sometimes known as the memory hormone. So cholesterol to pregnenolone to 150 other adrenal hormones, including testosterone, estriol, estradiol, estrone, progesterone, testosterone, androstenedione, DHEA, and more. So if you don't have enough cholesterol converting to pregnenolone, what do you know? You go into adrenal failure. What sorts of medications can do that, you might ask? Linda, thank you for the question.
Good question, Linda.
Okay,
Hey, no
the
problem.
statins will do this. So there are people out there that will end up with cognitive dysfunction from statins. These are things that they use to lower cholesterol. So if you lower it too much, or if you don't pay attention to pregnenolone levels, you can do brain damage. So wouldn't you know it, one of the things that we check our patients for at stages is, wouldn't you know, pregnenolone level. Is it an expensive test? The answer is no. It's
Not
about
at all.
$50.
No.
So this will tell you what's going on. And what do you do? My God, what can we do if it's low? You replace it for $28 a month. So I take pregnenolone on a daily basis. My wife Tess takes it on a daily basis because it's also thought to be preventive. So I'm willing to spend a couple bucks to do it. She is also, and I'm encouraging my patients that need it.
That was the question we had off the Facebook page, was how do we prevent or perhaps discourage dementia?
That's one way. The second way is to look at your temperature, sort out whether or not you're hypothyroid, and treat it, and get your temperature up to normal range. Cortisol levels, if they're too low, will lead to dementia. So you get a cortisol level. If it's too low, then you treat it. What does it take? It's about $20 a month. Not a big deal. That's a prescription item. The doctor will prescribe you Cortef. But how in the world can these things get thrown out of whack? The statins are a great example of how it happens to older people, middle-aged people. But how can a younger person watch their Cortef level or cortisol level drop? And the answer is simple. You may have received prednisone. Prednisone will chop the heck out of the adrenal glands. Now, why are doctors so flipped to prescribe prednisone for allergies, prednisone for asthma, prednisone for lots of different things? It has to do with training. Before prednisone, which is called a xenohormone, it's not natural. It's not even close to being natural. Before it was discovered and marketed, we used cortisol, Cortef, hydrocortisone. That was what we prescribed, and that worked beautifully until prednisone kicked out. The problem with prednisone is it chases down adrenal hormone. It'll put you into adrenal failure, and sometimes it can last for years. What else can do it? Adderall, Ritalin. Why is that? Because it shuts down a hormone called ACTH, which induces the secretion of cortisol. How else can you do it? Lupron. How else can you do it? The list goes on and on and on, to include opiates, painkillers, because that shuts down ACTH and gonadotropins, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. So the way that you can induce dementia is legion. There are many different ways to do it. It's fascinating. So I do this on a daily basis. We see about 60 people a day, and about a third of those we do this. And it's all involving blood work and follow-up. You diagnose them through the blood work, a few questions, a little bit of physical examination, old-fashioned medicine, and then you do something magical. You give them what they're missing. Wouldn't you know? You don't go for things that are molecules new to nature. What's the difference between a molecule new to nature and a synthetic? And the answer is a molecule new to nature is not found in your body normally, whereas a synthetic may be a natural compound that it's cheaper to make than it is to grind people up and extract it. So if you're looking for growth hormone, if you're looking for testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, or any of the subtypes of estrogen, you can't go out and just, you can't collect pregnant people's pee to get these estrogens or conjugate estrogens. This is nonsense. It worked for horses. Okay,
Thought
but it
there was
doesn't
a
work so
side
well for
business
people.
there. I'm thinking.
Well, you're always
constantly-
thinking. This
I
is a
know.
good thing. I love you for that. It's always hustling. Say,
Actually, I
okay.
was wondering because the ADHD, if you take the Adderall, it's to kind of stifle the brain from going. And then
But there
in
are
the
other
long-
ways to
yeah.
do it.
Then in the long run, you stifled the brain for good.
You kill it.
Yeah,
So
that's not good.
amphetamine is bad news. Whether it's DL-amphetamine called Adderall or whether it's amphetamine called methamphetamine, it doesn't make a lot of difference. It happens all the same. So patients come through, and I tried my hardest. Sometimes it's hard, not hard enough, or sometimes I nail it, whatever it happens to be, to figure out what the trigger was to cause this. So is it something that can be done? And the answer is yes. Now, so if somebody has thyroid disease, you treat the thyroid. You get aggressive with it. You don't sit back and go, oh my God, the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone, that's within range. My gosh, I've got a license that says that I can define what that range is. If I want the range to go up, I make it go up. If I want it to go down, it goes down. But it doesn't make any difference.
We're talking with Dr. David Klein from Stages of Life Medical Institute. If you hear anything that you want to check out, go to stagesoflifemedicalinstitute.com. Any of the products he's referencing, he probably sells them or has a lot of information on the everything. Just go to stagesoflifevitamins.com as well and put in a few letters and see what pops up. Really.
Yeah, but the real trick to it, okay, isn't the product.
Mm-hmm.
It's the process.
Mm-hmm.
The product is the easy part. You can train a monkey to go grab this,
And
that,
see,
or the other.
That's the thing about you is he's not here about to treat the symptoms. He wants to actually figure out what the problem is and treat the problem. And the symptoms usually go away, and then the long term, like
That's the magic.
What is that? That chronic pain syndrome or whatever that's called? What is it called?
CRP, CRIPS,
Yeah,
CRPS.
yeah.
Chronic regional pain syndrome or whatever. It's nonsense. Does it exist? The answer is yes.
Sure, because it's a symptom.
We used to call it reflex sympathetic dystrophy. Before that, it was called Sudex atrophy. Yes, I know a lot about that. But again, what causes it and who gets it? And we could talk about that for an hour or two.
We could, but we have to take a break.
And fix it.
And fix it. Okay. All right, we got to take a break here. We're talking with Dr. David Klein. In a second, I'm going to actually let Linda ask a question. Now, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. You might want to stay tuned. It's Connection Show.
Connections is Relationship Radio.
You don't know me, but my name is Mr. Big.
That is icky to infinity.
Laundry, huh? Is that my new nickname?
Aw, you know what your nickname is, Mr. Big.
Mr. Big is pleased.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining Connection Show. As promised, our guest host, Linda Voll, actually has a question to ask. We're talking about dementia with Dr. David Klein. Linda.
I do have a question.
And a question from Linda Voll.
Quick, hurry up. Get it in there.
Sleep issues.
Yes. Okay, so folks with Alzheimer's or other sorts of dementia very, very frequently have kind of a flipped clock. So the sun goes down and grandma starts to wake up. They start to go a little bit nuts. They call this sundowning. So what's it all about? It's a characteristic of Alzheimer's. Not all dementia does this. So as the ability to see starts to diminish, they start to make things up. So the environment is then kind of it's brought into its own little construct. So you can end up with somebody with Wernicke psychosis. They'll end up with an inability to remember why they're doing what they're doing, what they have, who they're related to, and they start to make up stories about it. It's called confabulation. The brain handles things differently with different disorders. Wernicke psychosis, confabulation. Folks that sundown start to hallucinate and they start developing delusions of a very different nature. So you treat them differently. You treat the folks with the delusions with antipsychotics like Seroquel. Does it help? Often it does. But what kinds of medicines can you take right now to start making yourself more likely to become demented? And this is going to surprise you. Cold preparations.
Really?
Antihistamines, anticholinergics are notorious for causing, what do you know about that? Memory loss and drowsiness. And you're going to go, well, how does that translate into dementia? Because the real issue with Alzheimer's has to do with a compound called histamine.
Ooh, I heard that.
So when you treat somebody with Alzheimer's, you're going to be giving them one of several medications that increases histamine. If you take a medication OTC, over the counter, that's an antihistaminic, wouldn't you know it? It actually counterbalances it, and over time can induce dementia. B12 deficiency can induce dementia. So if you take away stomach acid with PPIs and H2 blockers, very common things like omeprazole, Prilosec, or whatever, you're gonna end up developing dementia as well. So B12 dementia, B6 dementia, folic acid dementia. So you can make yourself sick, wouldn't you know it, by taking things that you shouldn't be taking for lengths of time that make no sense at all. So antihistamines, the first thing you do is you take people off antihistamines. And wouldn't you know it, the symptoms often improve. So get grandma off the darn antihistamines. Take away her cold meds. Some of them aren't really all that obvious, though, now are they? So what about things like Elavil, tricyclic antidepressants? But I'm taking that for my fibromyalgia. That's an antihistamine. It, too, will cause a type of dementia.
And fibromyalgia is?
Fibromyalgia is a symptom, not a disease. So let's fix the disease, get you off that garbage, and watch what happens. So you can, in fact, be causing this yourself. Okay. And that's really the saddest part about this. So one of the first things that I do when somebody comes in complaining of dementia, and can I fix all cases of dementia? No, sadly not. You know, I've got people that I tried my damnedest to pull, bail out of this stuff and haven't been able to. But many of them do extraordinarily well. So the first thing that you want to do is diagnose it properly, not the symptom. Well, dementia, that's not a symptom. That is not a disease. It's a symptom. So to tell somebody that they're demented is cruel.
Oh, yeah, I used to hear that all the time.
You are not giving them any hope. You are not giving them any chance to fix anything. It doesn't work well in my mind's eye. So you figure out why. And what's funny is that when you bring somebody in with age on them, 80-year-olds, they come in all the time, and they've got this problem, they have that problem, they can't pee, they have to wear Depends, whatever it happens to be. But when you do the hormonal workup on these folks, it's shocking how many of these people are actually a whole lot sicker than they look. And what's interesting about it is when you replace these hormones, which are very inexpensive. I mean, we are talking... We're talking less than your boat ramp fee, to go out bass fishing, per month, and you can actually bring grandma back. It's fascinating. Cortisol is one of my favorite things. It's been around since the 40s, really, but 50s is when it started coming into its own. It's a marvelous antidepressant.
Now,
which is interesting.
I have a neighbor who I believe I referred to you. It's been about a year now, and she relied on a reset. At a certain point, she'd see me. We'd have a little bit of a conversation, and then there was like this crutch phrase that would come out when she would kind of fade for a second and say, you really need to come over to the house. And that was her crutch phrase. And I never knew how to deal with that except to say to her partner, I really need you to go to Dr. Dave.
Yeah, well, you'll see that actually with folks with alcohol issues also. So, look back at it. Mm-hmm. So you end up with this dementia, this inability to grab names. But, Sunday, but, these folks that may have been broadcasters back in the day, they can sing marvelously. And one of my favorite things to do is to use people's work as a way to wake them up. It's a fascinating kind of a thing. So you've got a lawyer who's demented and, drooling there. And then you start running phrases at them. And all of a sudden they wake up. They come back. It's a fascinating reflex. So you're digging deep into their brain by just throwing words and phrases at them. There are people out there that have a hard time saying things, but they can sing them just fine. So you can help people through stutters and stammers by having them sing what they have to say rather than just try to say it. It's an old trick.
Did you find any of that early with your stepdad? I know it's been 10 years now.
My mom really didn't live with him then, but yeah, he used to hallucinate that people were coming over and drinking his beer.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so, but Wernicke psychosis. Okay, so he may well have been a heavy drinker and drank himself into dementia. When you damage the brain with toxins like that, it's not something that's very easily treated. So how do you do that? Hard drugs will do it, but alcohol is just famous for it. What other sorts of soft drugs can do it? Tobacco, believe it or not. So have you ever seen somebody that's been a smoker and you look at their lips and they end up with smoker's lines, right? You ever notice that?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a neat thing. Smoker's lines are, in fact, treatable, but they're not really something that you want to get if you can avoid them. What happens is the small vessels in the skin constrict, causing the tissue to get less blood flow than it should, which tends to cause it to scar down. You see smoker's lines. It happens every place in your body, to include your heart, so it causes hardening of the arteries. It'll cause aneurysms, as a result of certain other physical changes, but also microvascular dementia in the brain. That means the small vessels tend to clog up from tobacco smoke. So vascular dementia. So these are the sorts of things. There are many reasons why your mommy was right when she said don't smoke because it will stunt your growth. It's absolutely true because we continue to grow. Our brain continues to grow through the age of 25 or 26. You're still a clown, okay, when you're 21. 18, you got a problem. 25, 26, you're actually a little bit more responsible. Your frontal cortex is now mature, and then things start to fall apart. The wheels fall off the bus when you hit 40. By 50, you got a problem. But these are the sorts of things
you got to summarize this bad boy for us because I'm pretty sure we're running out. This has been very informative.
Yeah, I like this.
We've learned a lot about dementia and the varying degrees of it and all that. But I just give me something help.
The trick to this business and the take-home message is, one, there are things you can do. And it's not just a matter of running out and buying Namenda. That's cute. That'll help a little bit. What you need to do is figure out why. So you need a comprehensive thyroid evaluation, a comprehensive adrenal evaluation, comprehensive gonadotropin, as well as things like parathyroid, which can cause dementia. So what do we do at Stages of Life? We figure this stuff out.
There you go. More information, StagesOfLifeMedicalInstitute.com. Linda, thanks for guest hosting tonight. You did a great job. I wish I could have shut her up a couple times. Just kept rambling on. Dr. David Klein, always a pleasure.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you all for listening. Love you. Mean it. We'll catch you next time.
Laughing time is over.
There you have it, boys. Case closed.
You've been listening to Connections. Find tonight's show and replays of our past shows on ConnectionsShow.com.
If you're trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs